This is Tales from the Couch, but it kind of isn't. It's just a bunch of thoughts. So there you go, which is really all it is. Sometimes it's like really, really intense. Maybe during the playoffs it'll be more intense than some of that stuff. So I want to start with the Knicks. They lose to the Lakers last night. The Lakers kind of looking all right. I would say that they're okay. They don't seem to like to get to Anthony Davis a ton lately, though. I can't believe in that game against Boston, if you have Brogdon guarding you, you're like, wait, why can't you do this? Why can't you attack a little bit more? The Lakers, as it stands now, after that win, they are only 2 games out of the playing game. All right, but we'll bring up the Lakers later. I want to start with the Knicks here, which isn't the most important thing from last night, but it's just where I'm going to go. Okay, the Knicks' fourth quarter offense on the season is 26th. All right, and why do I bring that up? Because Brunson's been terrific for them, and I would put him, though, in my all NBA first team of guys that I really get frustrated with the calls that they get. He gets every call, but he's really good. And there was this kind of clutch points number where if you weren't watching the Knicks all the time and seeing some of this fourth quarter stuff, you were like, well, wait, he's third in clutch points, right? Brunson's averaging 4.2 points in clutch. Then there's some of the fourth quarter numbers where it was just like Brunson overall, like, look how great he's been. And then you're like, yeah, but the Knicks offense isn't that good in the fourth quarter, although clutch is obviously a small sliver of that fourth quarter. Some of the other fourth quarter stuff that I was looking up too, like Kyrie leads the NBA in points per fourth quarter, but he also plays almost the entire fourth quarter, where Giannis plays like 2 minutes less than him. Steph plays like 4 minutes less, because Steph was always somebody that would come back in at 6 during those runs. He comes in a little bit earlier now with Golden State. So the point that I'm making here is like, okay, so the Knicks, we know that Brunson's been really good for them. That clutch part has been really good for him specifically, but overall their fourth quarter offense isn't really that good. So I'm looking at some of the rotation. By the way, fourth quarter offense, don't freak out about it too much. I mean, other contenders, Milwaukee's 27th in fourth quarter offense. It doesn't really mean that much with the health issues they've had from scorers. Memphis is 29th. I don't know if that's an issue of being a little too predictable and how that'll play in the playoffs. And again, I'm presenting these as I don't know, but they're not great numbers. So, and even there can be times too where your fourth quarter numbers are bad, and it's like, yeah, well, that's because like the scores were kind of decided, but that's not really the case, because a lot of these games end up being close at some point, even when somebody's up 20, which is always surprising again too, when like a team's up 20 and they're like, oh, they blew the lead. Like everybody blows those leads because the other team plays harder when they're down 20. It happens every single night, multiple times a night. So I looked at the RJ Barrett part of this. If you remember and you listened to the pod for a while, or at least just last year, I started having these moments where I was watching RJ Barrett where I felt like he just looked like a better player. The numbers didn't necessarily mean he was making this massive leap, but he just looked like he was locked in a way that I hadn't seen before. And it gave me hope that he could be, a really good player. But one of my rules with substitution patterns is that I feel like the coach kind of tells you how he feels about the guy, a lot like Trubisky on third down with the Bears. When I see the play call, I go, ugh. They don't seem to really trust him all that much. So RJ's getting subbed out in the fourth quarters, but then he's kind of coming back in. But he didn't come back in last night. Against the Lakers, he was subbed out for Grimes, which is normal substitution pattern for Thibodeau, at 6:51, and he didn't play any of the fourth in overtime. Against Brooklyn, he was subbed out at 6:52 for Grimes, then came back in at 1:43 down 4. So that's 1 minute, 43 seconds left. Against Boston, he was subbed out with 5 minutes to go, then came back in with 2 minutes to go. So part of it's the pattern of like where he wants to break him. And against Boston, he had played in the overtime, hit a huge 3, 2 big free throws. But, keep going back. Like against Cleveland, he was subbed out at 7:12, then came back in at 1:31 left, down 3. RJ's overall numbers, like if you look at his numbers in January, he's 21-5. He's 45% from the floor, 37% for 3. His overall minutes in the fourth quarter are still pretty high because he starts the fourth there. But I just wonder, and it's something to keep monitoring there. Like, I guess Thibodeau likes Grimes defensively better than RJ. I guess he could argue, hey, it's just the way I want to sub it out. But if you're out during those, 6 to 7 minute stretches with a minute and a half, 2 minutes left the rest of the way, that might tell you that maybe they don't love him. Again, it's something that I would say is more like I'm going to monitor it. But he was straight up benched last night. So it was kind of developing in that way. And then last night I'm watching the game going, oh, he's just done with him. So there you go. There's a little Knicks talk. They're the 7 seed, about what you would expect if you've watched them this year. They'll be in the playoffs. I don't know that anybody's going to be scared of them. Speaking of seeding, Miami is the 6th seed today. They have won 7 of their last 10. Let's go over some of this Miami stuff. They're only 4.5 games behind Philly, who's in the 3rd spot. They're on fire. By the way, Philly has won 8 of 10. I know they lost to Orlando the other night. They get the rematch tonight. I love that Orlando team. I know they're not great, but damn, I love them. But Miami is now 10-5 in January. Now, what's my issue with Miami? I'm like, I don't know if they're going to have enough offense to scare anybody. Their offense still isn't good. They're 26th in January. Guess what? They're number 1 in defense. They're 2 points better than the number 2 defensive team for the month of January, and that was Memphis. So that's a massive gap. The difference is always going to be with them where they're going to play probably harder than you. They're going to most likely be better coached than you are. The rotation stuff, you're looking at it going, well, these guys are playing again. Well, Butler's played 13 of the 15 games, which is huge. Bam's played 13 of 15. Hero's missed 5. Lowry looks to be completely out of the closing group now. He's played 11 games. He's 6th in January in minutes. His numbers for January are abysmal. 7 points a game, 4 assists, 38% from the floor overall, 26%. I don't know if he's done, but it seems like he's done in the rotation part of this. But Miami, despite an offense that I was questioning last year, and they were still a shot away from playing for an NBA championship, which I still can't believe how it came down to that shot. I don't like the offense enough, but they're creeping up here. They really are. Miami, Philly in the first round. I mean, nobody's picking Miami as of right now, but who knows where this goes, especially if, I don't know if Lowry has anything, if there's something there at the trade deadline. But I'll give them this, man, the toughness part of it. They beat Cleveland last night, and Cleveland's a way more talented team. And I'm going to say this about Cleveland because I like them so much, and my standard for them is very high. Even though they're young, I expect this group to do something. And I don't know that the East is really good this year. So you can say, well, what does that mean? What if they're playing a healthy Brooklyn in the 4 or 5 and they lose in the first round? Does it mean you think they suck? No, but I think they should be competitive with almost any team here. Maybe not Boston, maybe not Milwaukee, but hell, you can even make an argument for Boston that after a massive 20-5 start, was it? Like, what are they? I'm allowing myself that, but then again, they're kind of looking at some of their health in the last couple games and missing Rob Williams and missing Marcus Smart too. But again, everybody can play this game. Same for Cleveland, who would say in January, well, wait a minute, Donovan Mitchell missed 7 games, but almost every team can play that game where it's like, well, our guys are kind of missing at this point. So the reason I bring this up is Cleveland was 8-1 to start. They're 23-21 since. That's November 7th. Looking at some of the other numbers for them, like I always feel like it's that 3rd spot where it's like, is it LeVert, who I don't like, and Okoro. But Okoro is actually 48% from 3 this month, which is insane. LeVert's 43% from 3 this month as well. So then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Does it mean I'm wrong about these guys? No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously you knew I was going to say that. But if you look at Okoro's months, he shot 0% from 3 in October, November 28%, December 29%. So that 3rd spot, that shot is going to be there all the time because of how much you have to help on Garland, how much you have to help on Mitchell, how much you have to worry about rolling Allen in the nights where Mobley, has a little bit more juice to him offensively. And despite his huge night, a couple weeks ago where he had 31, he was fucking awesome. I don't know that, you're penciling that in all the time. I guess I was just really upset with Cleveland because I thought Miami was way tougher than them. There was a stretch there where Butler got Mobley, went right at him, put his shoulder right into his chest and knocked Mobley backwards. Butler got Mobley again, then got switched off of him, and Mobley fought back to get it, and Butler didn't even care. They couldn't get the ball in bounds. There was a moment where Allen would have these nice cuts to the rim, but then would be super hesitant once he was there. And it's like, dude, it's you and Mobley against Bam. Like, go for it. There also was a loose ball where they didn't get it twice against Miami. It was like huge possessions and they needed it and they didn't get it. I don't know if this is something that I now say, well, Cleveland's a little too soft for me. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is last night they were soft and they got kind of grown up last night by the Miami Heat. So that was frustrating. Nice win for the Heat. Okay, keeping it moving here. What else? What else do we have? Oh, let's talk Ant. So Minnesota's an 8 seed this morning. They were a 5 seed 2 days ago. Welcome to the West. Again, a month ago, New Orleans was a half a game behind Denver. for the number 1 spot. Today they're 10th. They're 3-14 in the last 17. I thought they fought hard. I thought Brandon Ingram looked the best he has after missing 29 games. Don't know they use CJ a ton. I actually like the way Larry Nance tries to battle the Jokic. It doesn't mean a ton. There was a huge screw up there late where after a make, they let Jokic beat him with KCP in a layup. And then when you help off of Jokic, guys cut. We've all been over this a million times before. Nothing to see here. Murray, some huge shots last night too. So there you go. Bones apparently out of the rotation 5 minutes last night, didn't get back in. I know I don't know what the trade value for him would be. I think it was just, when I was talking about Bones Highland, and I'd say, man, when it's right, it's right. But boy, when it's not, it is a mess. I think there's too many of the second nights for Denver lately. Okay, so back to Anthony Edwards here in Minnesota. This is going to get rough. Buckle up. The trade deadline's a week away. They beat Sacramento, and then they lost to them. I thought that Mike Brown did a really good job with Sabonis fouling out in the more recent matchup where Sacramento won in overtime against Minnesota, where they put in Trey Lyles, and Lyles just moves around. He was their 5, and he's running around all over the place, and Minnesota had a brutal time trying to figure it out. Anthony Edwards in January is 27, 6, and 5, 47 from the floor, 39% from 3. I love him. We know that. I think he has a chance to be on that very short list of players who can impact a franchise in a major way. And that list is usually like 6 or 7 for me. If I wanted to be totally honest, maybe that list should only be like 3 guys. But you get my point. I think he has that chance, and I rarely say that about players. If you wanted to knock him a little bit for, is he still a little young and immature and that kind of stuff, all right, fine, whatever, you got me, all right? But I really hate the situation that he's in. So let's examine it. I'm going to try to be nice about this with D'Angelo Russell, but I think he's the worst player in the league that plays a lot of minutes. That was me being nice. He is so damaging to what you're trying to fucking do every night that it's awful. It's awful. I wouldn't pick him in a pickup game. I know what you're going to say, D'Angelo Russell fans, or hopeful T-Wolves fans that think that you're actually going to get something for him in a trade deadline that matters. In January, he's 19-6, 2.5 boards. The shooting numbers are insane. 47% from the floor, 46% from 3 on 7 attempts. He is lighting it up. So I know you're going to throw those at me. I shouldn't have said T-Wolves. Sorry. I don't care. I don't care what those numbers are. Because it's funny, when he was coming out of school, I was like, man, he's got this great pace, his read, his feel. I was like, no, he's just slow and casual. He's way too casual with the basketball. He's a casual basketball player. He's just out there running around. He gets lost. He freelances. I'd rather have Westbrook. All right? You've listened to me long enough. You know what that means. So to have that paired next to Anthony Edwards is a disaster. I don't even think Finch wants to play him. Like, I was going through some of the rotation stuff with RJ Barrett. Look at it with D'Angelo Russell at times. I think he's kind of stuck, and he's got to play him. They are paying him. He is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. They got to get him away from Anthony Edwards, and I'd imagine that if he's not traded, then he would be gone this summer. Karl Anthony Towns, I know he's out. And you're thinking, well, wait, without Towns, this is what we're doing. We were a 5 seed a couple days ago. I don't think Towns has the mentality of a guy that's really going to be a foxhole guy for you. I just don't. I've thought it for a long time. I'm trying to be nicer. And he's also, it's almost like tall D'Angelo Russell at times. Awesome numbers, incredible talent. I don't know what it means. I could watch a Timberwolves game and give you 10 to 15 clips of D'Angelo Russell doing stuff that I'm like, I can't believe this guy does this stuff. So then that leads us to Gobert. We all know the price that was paid, and it was brutal. Gobert, age 31 to 33, is going to make $41 million, $44 million. I usually make that player option joke where I'd say in 3 years, he's probably going to pick up that player option for $46 million. So let's go ahead and break that news right now. Sources here, the Ryen Russillo podcast. I could actually see where he would opt out and do like in a new cap version. Let me get 3 years for 90 and $30 million a year. Doesn't even seem that expensive. That would be like halfway to the max or something. So he may decide to opt out of that. The problem is now you have 2 guys that I don't think understand winning. You have Gobert that cost all of this stuff and is declining and then can get played off the floor because it happens. I've been saying it for years. Against certain matchups, Gobert's a liability. I don't want to hear about screen assists. It's a real thing. Utah no longer defends it. But the picks And it's not just about Walker Kessler right now, right? The Utah pick, Timberwolves will have, they're in 24. 25 is the Utah pick. 26 is swap. 27 is a Utah pick. 29 is top 5 protected. I would always love to know what those conversations are like where Justin Zanuck and Ainge are talking to Tim Conley and Matt Lloyd. And by the way, like, I think the Timberwolves front office is awesome. All right. I feel like this has a lot of new owner syndrome written all over it with the Gobert transaction. But when they're going, all right, we want 29. Well, we can't have that one unprotected as well. It's like, no deal. What about top 5 protected? What about top 10 protected? No deal. Like, you were going to say no to it until it became top 5 protected. That stuff fascinates me and will always fascinate me, and how those calls actually work. So the reason I've done this and repeated it all, stuff that you've all heard before, is that when I watch Anthony Edwards, I go, how long is this going to happen? Right? How long is this going to happen? How long is he going to let it happen? Because not only do you have 2 players that I don't think are winners next to him, you also have the Gobert and all the assets that you moved out. So you're not even going to be able to draft some of these other young guys to add to it. And it's not like Minnesota's some massive free agent destination. So you could argue, well, they didn't want to use their picks waiting for the guy that wanted to go to Minnesota, right? We know that was going to happen. But now it's like you're stuck. And it's so easy for the rest of us to be like, well, this is going to work. Do it over again. They just did it. It just makes me wonder how weird the Anthony Edwards situation could get if he continues to ascend as a player, which I believe that he will, and the pieces around him are just in his way. Everybody does the rookie extension, but this is getting way ahead of it. But I feel like he's in a situation now where he's just going to be treading water for a really long time. It's not like, hey, really good player has bad things around him. It's really good player, has a couple teammates I don't like, another one that seems outdated. Oh, and all the assets that we would use to maybe add other pieces to Anthony Edwards as he enters his prime. We don't even have those for the most part. They've got a couple picks here or there. Maybe they get creative. But it's not ideal, and they've made it even worse and more challenging for somebody who's going to want help at some point and may get so frustrated he's going to look around going, what am I doing here? All right. We finish with this then because of the picks thing. The Lakers and some of the trade stuff that you've heard, the Vucevic rule. I'm giving a front office guy credit for this. I'm not going to name him, but we were talking about trades, and he said something to me that I think is very simple, but should be kind of the rule that every front office has when you're thinking about trades. If you look back at the Vooch trade, it's disastrous now. You wouldn't trade Vooch for any one of the single things that they combined to do in that deal. You wouldn't trade Wendell Carter for Vooch. You certainly wouldn't trade Franz Wagner. You might not give him Mo. I don't know. That may be a little harsh. And you wouldn't give him what is a top 4 protected pick this year, right? You wouldn't say, okay, we want Vooch back. We'll give you back your top 4. You wouldn't do it. Not even close. People laugh at you. And those are the 3 things that you gave up. The 2 picks, Franz, which Franz, the one to be this year, and then Wendell Carter, right? So when you're thinking about doing that trade, you would ask yourself as a team, and this is, again, credit to my front office guy, which we should all be able to figure out, but it just sounds smarter from him. It's like, okay, I'm doing this and I'm moving these assets. What does this guarantee me? What does this guarantee us as a franchise? And for the Bulls, and to call myself out a bit, I felt like, hey, instead of waiting around and see if we can get one of those top 5 guys that gets mad every now and then, or a top 10 guy, like, let's spend our money on Lonzo, Caruso, DeRozan, and we trade for Vooch, and we'll see what happens. And what happens is the East got real good real quick. And Chicago, after that fun little ride last year, an awesome fan base. I love those games, United Center on Saturday night, just watching how intense that was. It was fun. But now it isn't fun because they're just not that good. And all these teams in front of them are just straight up better. And I don't know that there's some path where Chicago all of a sudden is competing with them. Chicago is now tied with the Pacers, but out of the play-in game. So they're technically the 11th this morning. That's awful. That's not what you had. I mean, look, Lonzo Ball's a nice player. He's not the reason you're the 11th seed today, okay? So you do a deal like that, and the answer is, what does this guarantee you? And the answer is nothing. It doesn't guarantee us anything. It doesn't guarantee us a first-round win. It doesn't guarantee us like, oh, we're definitely in the top 4. They're not even close to a lot of stuff. So the trade didn't work out. I understood why they did it at the time. But to go after a big like that and use those kind of assets, there's always a lesson there. Again, ask Minnesota. That's why I think the Lakers, when you look at what they could potentially do, right? Because it's better. It's better now. Feels like they have a few more options. Anthony Davis will get better. if he doesn't get hurt again, which, might be the better bet. But the Lakers are sitting there at 2 out behind the Pelicans. All right. The Thunder are ahead of them. Portland's ahead of them. So the Lakers at 24 and 28 are 11.5 out of 1, 9.5 behind. Pelicans 9.5. So you get the point. 2 games behind the Pelicans there. But again, with teams in front of them. So it's not just this direct path to catch them. If you were going to move one of those picks in 27 or 29, you have to take yourself through that process of, what does this guarantee me? What does Miles Turner guarantee me? What is this other expensive piece where I'm flipping? What does this guarantee me? And if you're the Lakers, even with LeBron and healthy Anthony Davis, I don't know that it guarantees you anything. And that should be when you stop asking if you should make that trade.